Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study of the entire Bible. Um, Before we get started, please hit that like and share button. I'm kind of really learning, I guess, what the algorithms are. So please hit the like and share button and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. All right, we are in Psalm. We're going to be at the Psalm, the ninth Psalm. Uh, of course, by habit, I want to refer to it as a chapter, but they're not chapters, they are actual songs. Um, and again, I'm not going to sing them or attempt to sing them, but if you kind of put in your head that they are songs, and probably more precisely Hebrew melodies. Okay? All right, here we go. Psalm 9. Psalm 9. I will thank Yahweh with all my heart. I will declare all your wonderful works. I will rejoice and boast about you. I will sing about your name most high. Now, again, you see the praise is always directed towards God. And even though he says, I will, okay, the focus is not in the sense on this is what I'm doing. So look at me, what I'm doing. No, God, he is expressing the wonderful works of God. Verse 3, when my enemies retreat, they stumble and perish before you, but you have upheld my just cause. You are seated on your throne as a righteous judge. You have rebuked the nations. You have destroyed the wicked. You have erased their name forever and ever. The enemies have come to eternal ruin, and you have uprooted the cities, and the very memory of them has perished. Now, just so we know, remember, all are wicked before God. What is righteous is those who cling to the Lord in faith, even in the Old Testament. Verse 7. But the Lord sits enthroned forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He judges the world with righteousness. He executes judgment on the nations with fairness. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in time of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, because you have not abandoned them. Those who seek you, Yahweh. Sing to the Lord who dwells in Zion. Proclaim his deeds among the nations. For the one who seeks an accounting for bloodshed remembers them. He does not forget the cry of the afflicted. Be gracious to me, Lord. Consider my affliction at the hands of those who hate me. Lift me up from the gates of death, so that I may declare all of your praises. I will rejoice in your salvation within the gates of daughter Zion. The nations have fallen into the pit they made. Their foot is caught in the net they have concealed. The Lord has revealed himself. He has executed justice, striking down the wicked. For the work of their hands, I'm trying to think, Higgaion, Selah. Okay. The wicked will return to Shiloh. All the nations that forgot God, but the oppressed will not always be forgotten. The hope of the afflicted will not perish forever. Rise up, Lord. Do not let man prevail. Let nations be judged in your presence. Put terror in them, Lord. Let the nations know they are only men. Selah. One of the interesting things about when you see the cry of this, when do you think God will answer this? In other words, let's say going through David's lifetime, some people got judged, but others didn't. And the nations, certainly some of the nations he referred to, remained and prevailed. And the one reason why is because the world itself is wicked. And it's going to, so that as long as this world exists, So as we're looking now, uh, maybe 2,500, between 2,500 and 3,000 years ago, David is writing this around this time. Wicked still prevails. All right. Psalm 1. Lord, why do you stand so far away? Why do you hide in times of trouble? Kind of remember when we went through Job, he kind of felt the same way. And as I said then, whenever you kind of when you're afflicted, when you're going through adversity, it always seems like you're on an island, you're isolated, you're alone. So he's asking God, where are you? And the reality, of course, is God is always working his counsel. He's always around. Verse 2. In arrogance, the wicked relentlessly pursue the afflicted. Let them be caught in the schemes they have devised. For the wicked one boasts about his own cravings. The one who is greedy curses and despises the Lord. In all his schemings, the wicked arrogantly thinks there is no accountability, since God does not exist. Now, here we kind of see this right here about the atheists mentioned in David's time. God does not exist. His ways are always secure. Now, by the way, how would an atheist want to say that? Right? Because look at the very first word. Look at the very first phrase. Lord, why do you stand so far away? And why do you hide in times of trouble? So you can, when it seems like, okay, well, God is not here because we cannot see him with the physical eye. Okay, well, he doesn't exist. God doesn't exist. All right, verse 5. His ways are always secure. Your lofty judgments are beyond his sight. He scoffs at all of his adversaries. He says to himself, I will never be moved. From generation to generation, without calamity, cursing, deceit, and violence fill his mouth. Trouble and malice are under his tongue. He waits in ambush near the villages. He kills the innocent in secret places. He hides his eyes on all the lookout for the helpless. He lurks in secret like a lion in a thicket. He lurks in order to seize the afflicted. He seizes the afflicted and drags him in his net. So he is oppressed and beaten down. The helpless fall because of his strength. He says to himself, God has forgotten. He rides his face and will never see. Rise up, Lord God. Lift up your hand and do not forget the afflicted. Why has the wicked person despised God? He says to himself, you will not demand an account. Now, wicked people live and say that, right? They say it and they live their lives like that. And sometimes it seems unfair because it seems like they get away with their wickedness. Verse 14. But you yourself have seen trouble and grief, observing it in order to take the matter into your hands. The helpless entrust himself to you, and you are a helper to the fatherless. Break the arms of the wicked and the evil person. Call his wickedness into account until nothing remains of it. The Lord is king forever and ever. The nations will perish from his land. Lord, you have heard the desire of the humble, and you will strengthen their hearts. You will listen carefully, doing justice for the fatherless and the oppressed, so that men of the earth may terrify them no more. All right, Psalm 11. Psalm 11. I've taken refuge in the Lord. How can you say to me, escape to the mountain like a bird? For look, the wicked string the bow. They put the arrow on the bowstring. They shoot from the shadows at the upright in heart. And when the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes watch. He examines everyone. The Lord examines the righteous and the wicked. He hates the lover of violence. He will rain burning coals and sulfur on the wicked. A scorching wind will be their portion. For the Lord is righteous. He loves righteous deeds. The upright will see his face. Now, a couple of things I want to say here. First of all, from David's perspective, when he says God is going to exact judgment. So the other thing is when, right? Well, we don't know that. And of course, from David's perspective, that time has been come and gone, okay? We do get insights into what God views as right and wrong, however, that he doesn't like wickedness, violence. He doesn't like those who take joy and pleasure in him either. Excuse me. All right. Psalm 12. Help, Lord, for no faithful one remains. The loyal have disappeared from the human race. They lie to one another. They speak with flattering lips and deceptive hearts. May the Lord cut off the flattering lips and the tongue that speak boastfully. They say, through our tongues we have power. Our lips are our own. Who can be our masters? Because the oppression of the afflicted and the groaning of the poor, I will now rise up, says the Lord. I will put not one who longs for it in a safe place. The words of the Lord are pure words, like silver refined in an earthen furnace, purified 7 times. You, Lord, will guard us. You will protect us from this generation forever. They wander everywhere, and what is worthless is exalted by human race. Now, this is so much true, right? What is worthless is exalted. We could go on and on, couldn't we? All right. Psalm 13. How long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long will you store up anxious concerns within me? Agony in my mind every day. How long will my enemy dominate me? Now, from David's perspective, when he asked this, we could also interject, have you been bad, David? Have you sinned? Have the generation sinned? Have Israel sinned? Verse 3, consider me and answer, my Lord my God. Restore brightness to my eyes, otherwise I will sleep in death. My enemies will say, I have tried, and my foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I have trusted in your faithful love. My heart will rejoice in your deliverance, and I will sing to the Lord because he has treated me generously. All right, Psalm 14. Psalm 14. The fool says in his heart, God does not exist. They are corrupt. They do vile deeds. There is no one who does good. Now he says the fool says in his heart, God does not exist. Now I'm going to save the definition of fool when we get to Proverbs. Because notice he says what a fool is. Now, again, I'll save the definition of it because, of course, Proverbs is going to deal with this term often. But you start with the idea that wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord. And now he says a fool. Well, let me give you just a quick definition. A fool is someone who does not believe God. A fool is someone who does not believe in God. And a fool is someone who does not obey God. Meaning this, God says, don't go down that path. It's dangerous. It's wrong. You go down that path and then you perish. That's a fool. A fool. We've all been fools. We've all been foolish. But the biggest fool, of course, is one who says God doesn't exist. Now, there are people who will say that they are science, that they say God doesn't exist based upon scientific evidence. Well, I say that is one of the biggest violations of the scientific evidence. In other words, there is absolutely no scientific evidence that proves God doesn't exist, one, and it doesn't prove God's claims. And so, without getting into a whole, again, exhaustive explanation of that, and it does deserve that, the Big Bang Theory, even looking at the universe, you doesn't conclude with saying there is no God, that this happened by natural processes. Okay? A fool says that. And so you start with, I don't want to believe in God in the first place. I don't want to submit to God. From which you will, again, pay the cost for that. But when he said the fool says in his heart, God doesn't exist. Okay? He says that based upon his sinful nature. Plain and simple. Not scientific evidence. Because how can you say that? I mean, at the very least, what if God created the earth and then went, 100 billion light years away? So that means you just couldn't see him. And the fact that he decided not to show up when you demand for him to show up doesn't prove he doesn't exist. I would even go a step further to say that when you look at the stars and look at the creation itself, and then you say, well, this just happened. This very simple pen, right, or pencil, had to be designed, tested. In other words, everything about it was designed in purpose. Look at my heart. Look at this mug. I'm sorry, but look at this mug here, right? I mean, just think about the intestines. I mean, we could literally go on with millions of parts and say, well, why did this happen this way? Right? The sexual organs. So you're going to say it just didn't happen for no reason. It's just boom. And the Big Bang produced this. You start with the Big Bang, and then all of a sudden it produced it. And not to mention, Earth is the only place where it happens. But anyway, the fool says in his heart, God doesn't exist. They are corrupt. They do vile deeds. There is no one who does good. That phrase there, now look at you'll see in Romans 3, which is a declaration of the sinful nature of man. There is no one who does good. Now, good, this word good is very interesting. Go back to Genesis and see how God defines good. So the idea of what good is would be according to God's definition. And thus, there is no one, not one, who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on the human race to see if there is one who is wise, one who seeks God. And obviously none, right? All have turned away, all alike have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. So when you see man trying to say, here's our definition of good, when you measure it against God's definition of good, man fails. Will evildoers never understand? They consume my people as they consume bread. They do not call on the Lord. Then they will be filled with terror, for God is with those who are righteous. You sinners frustrate the plans of the afflicted, but the Lord is his refuge. Oh, that Israel deliverance would come from Zion. When the Lord restores the fortunes of his people, Jacob will rejoice, Israel will be glad. And that in itself right there is a prophecy, right? Now actually God, from David's perspective, you look at from David's perspective as he's writing this, Israel has failed to the wicked in times past, and they will fall in the future. And yes, God will restore them. But what a scathing accusation or description from God, right? From God on man. There is no one who does good, not even one. And what is kind of interesting about that then is how can you then be saved if you do not recognize you are not good before God? Question mark. All right, guys, don't forget to like this video. Hit that like button. Don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP the Bible Perspective. And as always, all comments are welcome. Add them to the comments section below. See